What's up, YouTube? Hope everybody's doing well out there in TV land. So, I wanted to revisit Sultai Shadow, but if you've seen some of my previous videos, not only on the Sultai list running around with like Invasion of Ikoria, but I kind of tried out the Invasion of Ikoria tech in Golgari and Jund just to see how it goes. And I know some people have been having better results than I have with it, but I just haven't been that fond of the tech. So I really wanted to like try out Sultai Shadow my way, which is more of like a Sultai mid-range Shadow and less of an all-in like keep throwing vanilla big threats at your opponent Shadow. So I just wanted to see how it goes. Some of the changes over the traditional Shadow list that I decided to make were like upping the number of Stubborn Denial, Drown in the Lock, cut what's it called? Cut Abrupt Decay, cut the Invasion of Ikoria package, went up on like Dismembers, added a Tireless Tracker, upped the Inquisition count, some kind of stuff like that. Just up the interaction and reduce the ability to get shadows and goyfs, but increase the mid-rangey aspect of your threats, adding in some Grim Flayers, Tireless Tracker, stuff that kind of go better into the late game if your big vanilla thing isn't working out. In the sideboard, added a whole bunch of endurances. I know they're a little awkward with Drown in the Lock, but a lot of the times the things that you want endurance or the matches that you want endurance in, Drown in the Lock's not great anyway. So against like blue-red Murktide, you want to be able to shut off Delirium, shut off Murktide, but Drown in the Lock's not great because if they cast a Murktide, Drown's probably dead anyway. Or against like Living End, you don't care if they have no graveyard because Living End itself is a 0 mana cost spell or doesn't have a mana cost. So Drown in the Lock's going to hit it regardless. The times you're really going to miss it are against things like you're opposing maybe Jund mid-range decks, Wrenn and 6 decks, stuff like that. But hopefully they'll be filling their yard enough to where it doesn't matter too much. Otherwise, threw in a couple natural states because I wanted to try it out. I know a lot of Zoo players have been running natural state, so figured I'd give it a shot. A couple EE, couple Path of Peril, just to kind of help out with some of the small creature matchups. Like I've been seeing mono white humans a ton in the leagues recently, so I kind of wanted the Path of Perils for that matchup. It can be really dicey to put out chump blockers because they have access to Shining Shoal. But if you're able to just like wipe the board and then drop down a threat, then I'm kind of hoping that Path will cause them peril and us victory. That was good, right? That was A tier pun. No. All right. But let's go ahead and get in. Showcase some Sultai. Sultai is the color combination I think most Shadow players really want to be good because I think it emphasizes everything that is interesting to me about Death Shadow. So you get the black for like the hand disruption and some of the removal spells like Fatal Push. You get the green for the above rate creatures like Tarmogoyf. You get the blue for the counter magic. So it's like all the really good stuff, but it's never been a color combination that's like consistently worked out. So let's see what happens. We're on the draw. Opponent's got a Windswept Heath. We do have this Inquisition. So double Prismatic Ending, Nissa, Wrenn and 6. I'm assuming we're against just like a 4-color Omnath deck. Yep. Pick of the Devil. So Nissa is just kind of like a value piece. We've got Dismember here if they decide to just play out blind Nissa. Unfortunately, they decided to play out blind Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So, little unfortunate. Drawing Fatal Push is nice. I didn't need to fire off the Drown into turn there or the Dismember into turn because I could always untap Dismember, still have Drown. So it's not too big of a deal, but I saved 2 life by not having to fetch and shock and then dismember. Here we get to get a couple clues for our tireless tracker. Hold up, dismember. So if they do go for like Nissa and then a land drop, we can interact with that. So we know their hand is second prismatic ending Nissa. They're going to flip this Fable, but I do have like 3 removal spells right now to their 2 threats. Of note, since this Nissa does trigger on multiple land drops, kind of like Omnath, I don't really care about interacting with the first trigger because it's just float a mana. So I can wait for them to put another trigger on the stack. But if I respond to the first trigger with Dismember, then they can respond with fetching, go get a land, and put an elemental into hand. So I want to wait for them to make the first move. Pretty important. All right, so we'll go ahead and kill off the Reflection. We know their last card is Prismatic Ending. We've got Drown. We've got these clue tokens to help draw us out of it. I will say is like a bit of a foreshadowing. I have been very impressed with Tireless Tracker. I think it's done a really good job of helping to kind of mitigate some of these slow grind them out games. So Solitude. I know they have a prismatic ending, but I'll drown in the lock this Solitude just to make them use this pending on their turn, hopefully. Not a pending. I liked it better when I thought their only card was a pending. So if you haven't seen this One Ring card, this thing is an absolute nightmare and a half for any sort of mid-range mirror. So what it does is, let's straighten out my hat here. It's a 4-mana indestructible artifact. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, so you got to cast it, you can't just like blink it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. No attacks, no thought sees you. Protection from everything until your next turn. You tap it and you put some sort of counter on it. I forgot what the name of it is. And then you draw a card for each of those counters on it. Doesn't cost you any mana to tap it. You just tap it, draw a card for the equal to the number of counters. The drawback, the balancing, the thing that makes this okay to print into a legal set is on your upkeep, you lose life equal to the number of counters on it. So, for example, 4 mana, this thing just came down, hit the battlefield. They get to tap it, put a counter on it, draw a card. Next turn, they're going to lose 1 life. They've got protection from everything during my turn, so I can't hit them and take advantage of this. On their turn, they're going to lose 1 life. They're going to tap it again, put a second counter on it, draw 2 cards. And then the next turn, they're going to lose 2 life. Then they're going to tap it, put a third counter, draw 3 cards. So this turn basically completely free. They get this turn off because I can't attack back. I can't take advantage of them being tapped out here. Next turn, they're going to have lost 1 life and drawn 3 cards. On the turn after that, they're going to have lost 3 life and drawn 6 cards. 3 turns, one of which is free because they got protection from everything. So essentially or effectively 2 turns, lost 3 life, drawn 6 cards. Like you see how that snowballs, right? And I have a hard time thinking I'm not going to play some Shadow Brew at some point with the ring just to see what it's all about. But it is going to skyrocket, at least for us, the viability of cards like Tear Asunder that exile instead of just destroy an artifact or enchantment. So keep that in mind. All right, so my hope is that they just draw dead. They're going to see 4 new cards next turn between their draw and the ring trigger. Maybe it won't be too bad. Never mind. It's too bad. So yeah, card is just absolutely insane, and I've seen it getting played out of I've seen it out of 4-color, I've seen it out of Ponza, Tron, um something else. So go ahead and cycle Street Wraith on our main phase there, because like my life total doesn't matter too much. I'm gonna get down low enough for Shadow, and either they're gonna be able to solitude me or not. Let's get Goif down. They could have like a Renin 6 here. Nope, just a pending. So we'll take this opportunity to go ahead and Spreading Seas the Triome, maybe cut back on some of their mana. Or some of their available plays, I should say. Like, we have cut them off of green mana, which is really nice. I know that this Traverse only gets a basic land here, but I want to lose the life for Shadow to get up to Ferocious. I can't dismember my own Shadow without dealing less damage, but I can dismember on like the end of their turn. But I don't want to do it on my main phase, so I just want to do something to lose the 1 life. And getting the basic land makes it a little bit easier to like pop Pete land in a turn or two. So I'm pretty okay with it. So yeah, there's Solitude, unfortunately, allowing them to pay for Fable. If they had hit that red source last turn, I think we would have gotten to soft stub the Fable. But hey, we get a Turok. And I don't know how much you've played this matchup. Turok is lights out good against anybody running like Prismatic Ending and Solitude, Leyline Binding, all that kind of stuff. And gets buffed by the fact that my opponent's just ditching cards to Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So I would absolutely say if like the 4-color piles are a matchup that you're really concerned about and really want to key in on, I'd find room for like 3 Turok in your sideboard, because it can do a lot of work there. Obviously, you have to set it up very well. Like, you can't just put yourself in a position to get your Turok Veil of Summered. But if you can kind of play around that a bit, it's good. All right, absolutely take the opportunity to Stubborn Denial a Teferi. Hopefully, if our opponent has like a fetch land next turn before an Omnath, we get to fight over that way. I'm just going to go for Grist. Well, they can't Fury, or they can if they evoke it, but I'm kind of happy if they end up evoking it. All right, so they get an Omnath, and they have a Fury, but they ditch their Omnath to Fury. So I'm not that upset with how this is played out, because at the end of the day, like, I get Grimflare. Okay, I want to talk about this line because this is important. I can just go ahead and like main phase Drown in the Loch the Nissa, but the Nissa doesn't matter if they don't have a land drop. If they do play a fetch land and go to crack it, I can respond by killing the Nissa, but it would be way, 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 way more important for me to interact with like an Omnath here than interact with a Nissa that might not actually trigger. So I don't want to fire off a Drown on this Nissa. I want to wait and see if they put a big elemental on the stack and fight over that. Because if they don't have a land drop, then this Nissa just doesn't do anything, and I don't care about it. So it's one of those situations of like, just because you can interact with something doesn't necessarily mean you should interact with something. Put a couple of Thought Seizes on top so we can hopefully fight over like this Leyline Binding Solitude situation. Forgot about that little update window that popped up. So they got to use the extra mana to Leyline Binding and then kill Nissa before they got to search for something. So now it's down to just Solitude. Yeah, I don't have the mana to kick Turok. Even if I did, they just Solitude in response. But at least I have the ability to put Turok on the battlefield. Stands in the way of Solitude pretty well. We just need to find an answer to the Solitude and hopefully an answer to like whatever their next thing is. There's our answer to Solitude. We know we can safely dismember while they're tapped out here. And we just got to hope to fade a few draws. And I thought this was kind of interesting. So I end up like bobbling them. I see a land, which is great, but then they fetch it away. I don't think they should be fetching here. Like, for one, it reduces the clock by a turn. And for two, if you find an Omnath, you want those lands in play so you can get all your Omnath triggers. So I didn't really understand that one. But opponent flooding out pretty bad here. There's one ring. So I was kind of laughing at this. I was like, oh, they found a ring. They can't hit a white removal spell. They die on their next upkeep to the ring trigger if they draw a card. So they'd have to hit like a Teferi to bounce the ring because they have protection from me this turn, so I can't attack and kill them. They'd have to find like exactly Teferi. Oh, got it. So now they can bounce the ring and then replay it next turn. But I guess they just decide that they don't have enough ways of like dealing with Turok. They don't have protection, or they have protection. Teferi doesn't. So I can still kill the Teferi. I just can't kill them next turn. Also can't Thought Seize them. But either way, I thought that was pretty funny to have one draw step to hit Teferi and actually hit the Teferi. Also, since the ring triggers resolved, they don't have to still have the ring on the battlefield to get the effect of protection for the next turn. All right, Codex Shredder means Lantern Control. Got a really good hand against Lantern Control here. Got threats, got a Drown in the Lock. We see double Urza Saga, second Spire of Industry, Karn, Lantern of Insight. I'm just going to take the Lantern because it's like the next thing that does anything. They take my Thought Seize. This is fine because Urza Saga is going to go to the yard before they can play the Karn. So they're going to put the fourth card in their yard for Drown in the Lock before Karn gets cast. I've made the joke a couple times before that if you're looking for like a reason to play blue-based Death Shadow decks, Lantern Control is the reason. It's a pretty good matchup for us. Like, I know we have dead fatal pushes and stuff, but we just have really big threats and counter spells. And like the only thing that you really have to actually worry about is Ensnaring Bridge. And a lot of the times, if you're playing a green-based Shadow deck, you've got access to like Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, Natural State, Terra Sunder, whatever the case is. So you probably have a reasonable number of ways of dealing with that. Decided it's fine to trade off the Grim Flayer because I've got extra threats in hand. I've got this Drown in the Lock sitting around. Don't care about a Codex Shredder. So their only play is to make a Saga token and try to chump block. But as soon as they do that, I get to kill the token. So pretty clean. For the most part, it's very difficult for them to interact with like the stuff in our hand. They're very, very good at preventing you from drawing relevant things after like the second or third turn of the game. They're not very good at fighting over like what you already have. And since a lot of our hands are very straightforward from the get go, like hand disruption, threat, counterspell, uh, that's often like enough to kind of get you there. Didn't really talk sideboarding much, but sideboarding against Lantern Control, like all the remove, basically the same as most combo matchups, like all the fatal pushes, dismember, stuff like that's coming out, bringing in any extra counter spells, bringing in natural states, anything that deals with artifacts or enchantments, spreading seas to hit Urza's Saga, all that kind of stuff. And then this is what I mean about it kind of relying or depending on the opening hand here. It's like they're not interacting with our Goyf. We've got a stub in hand. We've got Grist if we end up wanting it. Opponent's going to give us another stubborn denial, sure. Now we got a double stub and a shadow, so it's kind of hard to find a lot of ways that our opponent's able to get out from here. We just need to make sure we are able to get our breeding pool if they don't like ship it away somewhere. They can make a 5/5 construct, but between the fetch lands, we can outgrow that construct really well. We don't care about the Ensnaring Bridge. We know their last card in hand is a Karn. Don't care about the Ensnaring Bridge. Since opponent cracked the Bauble on our turn, we didn't need to like fetch and shock. We can just fetch, put them down to 5 so that either our Goyf or our Shadow are lethal next turn. Make another construct, sure. Constructs are on double chump block duty, but I can also just grist, sack off, kill one of the constructs, and then they're dead. As such. So yeah, we just have a bunch of stuff that interacts really well, and they don't have a bunch of stuff that interacts with us very well. So very, very clean 2-0. All right. Whole bunch of wraiths and thought seasons and stuff. So a lot of times people I think see these hands and they immediately want to like fetch shock, cycle wraith, thought seize. And I think that's great if you already have like shadow and stub in hand or something like that. But if you don't have shadow and stub, then you run the risk of going up against something aggressive and not being able to take back that life loss. So you kind of put yourself in a losing position before the game's even started. But if you just go with like your first hand disruption spell and save the wraiths for turn 2 or later, then you still have that ability to turn the corner, lose the life quick enough to get your threats online. But you don't run the risk of just being like dead in the water to an aggressive deck. Now, obviously, that can have some complications because you don't have all the information for your hand disruption. But if I'm sitting here looking at like 3 hand disruption spells, I don't really care if I don't have all the information for all of them. I just know I've got enough of them to take most everything I'm going to be worried about. So we're up against some sort of creativity deck. See, binding, creativity. Just going to go ahead and take one of these bindings, try to find like a threat. Speak of the devil. Unfortunately, we do not have delirium on this this little grim player. But we do have soft stub for a creativity, so that's something. Opponent is not going for it. Nope. Whole bunch of lands. I believe this is a 19 land build, so Hitting 6 lands on turn 6, probably not where you want to be. Since opponent played Transmogrify with the mana available, I'm assuming like their one blind card is probably a Spell Pierce, and I probably couldn't beat that anyway. So well, I could if I had a threat and had like a hard Stubborn Denial, but no threat, Soft Stub, probably not beating a Spell Pierce. That's how it goes sometimes. I have a bit of a delay here. Let's see if we can fast. Oh, there we go. Never mind. We got there. I think for most blue-black based Shadow decks, creativity is like a fairly decent matchup. Over 50%, but it can have some complications. Like, obviously, your opponent's got access to things like Veil of Summer. I hate that card so much. All right. Want to play out Grimflayer first. So if my opponent has, like, a bolt or something to kill the Flayer, makes the Tarmogoyf bigger. Obviously, that's not a bolt. I would have preferred a bolt. Absolutely take the opportunity to Stubborn Denial a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So that's going to grow Goyf. And now we can choose between Grist, hold up Flusterstorm, or the second Goyf. And I think kind of like the beatdown plan is a little bit more consistent for us. If it were like a mid-range matchup, I'd be more on board with Grist. But since this is like a combo matchup, so you change the equation creativity, definitely taking the creativity. But because this is more of a combo matchup, I'm more interested in just like getting my opponent dead. Flusterstorm gives us hopefully an out to creativity itself if they top deck another one. Ditch both the Scalding Tarn and they change the equation. So they've got 2 unknown cards in hand. Oh. So if they creativity for like 2, we can Flusterstorm it unless they have a Veil of Summer. That's the only thing that beats us. Spell Pierce does not. Creativity for 1 beats us. But who plays creativity for 1? Punt opponent. So this is kind of a funny situation. They play creativity for 1, but they target their treasure token instead of one of their creatures. So if they target a creature, they run the risk of me having a removal spell and killing the creature, and the creativity fizzles. So they say, okay, I'm going to target the token. Unfortunately, targeting the token does not beat Flusterstorm or Spell Pierce, because if they want to pay for it, then they have to sack the treasure token to pay the mana. They can't beat it with Veil of Summer because they have to sack the treasure token to pay the green. So it beats a removal spell, but it doesn't beat the majority of counter spells. And I think right there, I probably would have played around the counter spells because it's a post-board game and your opponent's less likely to have a counter spell and more likely, or less likely to have a removal spell, more likely to have a counter spell. So I gave them 1 turn to hit a creativity there. They did not. They attacked at me, which is great because now I have the ability to sack Grist, kill off the Reflection. I can Inquisition first, see if the coast is clear, which it is. So now I just have Grist, sack a token, kill a dude, drown in the lock, kill a dude, attack for lethal. So definitely a good reminder there of to keep in mind when you're playing matches. Like, am I in game 1? Am I post board? What's my opponent likely to sideboard against me? Which is one of the reasons, if you haven't yet, and you want to check out our matchup guide series, also here on YouTube, we talk about not only what we're bringing in certain matchups, but what our opponent's likely to be boarding out and boarding back in, and how we need to respect those things. And I think that's very important in situations like that, where, oh, if I'm playing creativity and I'm playing against Death Shadow, they're likely more uh more in line to have more counter spells post board, less removal. So if I had the opportunity to play around one or the other, I would rather play around the counter spell than the removal spell. Obviously, cards like Drown in the Lock exist that can do both, but so be it. All right. It's an okay hand. Like, we've got the EEs to help fight over tokens. I've got threats. I've got a counter spell, but everything's like a turn slow here. Not having the 1 mana hand disruption spell really hurts. Fetch and shock up this Watery Grave, so hopefully I can like psych my opponent out of playing a Wrenn 6 if they're afraid of like Stubborn Denial here. I thought about going for a Tarmogoyf, but decided to sit back on Drown in the Lock instead in case they play third fetch land like Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I can fight over that. Then here we'll just hold up EE in case we need to hit a token, or Drown in the Lock in case we need to hit like a 3-drop. So they got Fable plus Spell Pierce. Little unfortunate. But at least we have the ability to like get down Goyf, hold up EE. Obviously, if we weren't terrified of just getting creativity here, I would love to play out Tireless Tracker plus a fetch land. If we had like, if they didn't have a token on board and like 4 cards in hand, I would probably go for Tracker plus fetch land just to try to get some card advantage going. Expecting like a bolt on the Tarmogoyf. So they have an opportunity to bolt the Goyf and don't. So I'm kind of thinking they don't have it. Because you absolutely go for the bolt here if you have it. Because if I counter the bolt, that means if you've got a creativity, it's safe and you can resolve it. If you pass the turn and I just let you go to my turn, you lose the ability to bolt the Goyf. So I'm just going to go for crack this EE into turn, take like my getting 2 tokens off the board, untap with a free and clear hand. Missed out on Tireless Tracker value here. I should have played the fetch land, or I should have played the Inquisition first, and then seen what was going on, decided on the Tireless Tracker after that. But I played the land first because I kind of forgot Tireless Tracker was a card in my deck. Whoops. All right, so opponent did not blind draw creativity, which is nice. Now, I'm just going to hang on to double Stubborn Denial. If my opponent double blocks Tracker, I'm like ecstatic. Change the equation, sure. So their last card is Spell Pierce. I've got double Stubborn Denial to protect whatever I need to counter. So we are golden. Win that one on to 3-0. Nice. I do want to say I absolutely appreciate my opponent's username here. It's Brazzers Borrower, if you can't see. I will not be explaining the joke in the comment section, so you're on your own there. Google at your own free will, but I'm not recommending that either. Opening hand, we're on the draw. Goyf and Drown, 5 lands. 5 lands is just way too many. Got to ship that back. The 6, of course. If you know the running joke with Magic Online, if you have an opening 7 that is somewhat playable, like a mix of lands and spells, can cast your spells, even if you're like flooded, if you throw it back, you are going to get an unkeepable 6. like a no questions asked, cannot play this 6. And it's usually either no lands or 7 lands. And it happens such a ridiculously high amount of the time that it's absolutely hilarious. So we end up keeping 5, throw back a couple lands. Oddly enough, like the exact same as the opening hand, except we have 2 less lands. Goyf, drown, couple fetches. Drawing Wraith is nice. I'll keep Grist because it's like one of my only ways of answering a Murktide in the main. Because I thought they were blue-red Murktide, but then they played an Arid Mesa, and I quickly realized this is not blue-red Murktide, and Grist looks horrendous. So, joke's on us. Could get down a little Goyf here, but I think I'd rather just hang on to Drown in the Lock. Cool. Counter an expressive iteration. Boo. Didn't want him to have another threat. So some piece of interaction. That is a technical piece of interaction. Could main phase dismember the Soulscar Mage, but that does give them access to Delirium. So they're going to go for Mutagenic on the Soulscar. I'm going to respond with Dismember the Soulscar. I do have this Channeler blocked right now because they decided to do this after attacking. They're going to have to put quite a few Lava Darts into this Tarmogoyf to kill it off. Which it looks like they are deciding to do, yeah. So go down to 1 land, 1/3/3 Channeler. We're going to hold on to this Wraith, so hopefully we can like hit them, see a removal spell or something on top, cycle Wraith to draw into it. But our life total is getting very, very low. We do see the Dismember, but I think I'm just going to get like this Grist down. I could sack the Grim Flayer, kill off the Channeler, and just hope they didn't have a removal spell to hit the Grist on the way back. Might have been better. I don't think they had another dart in the yard. Boo, lightning bolt, boo. So we got 1 card available in hand. Attack all out. So we've got to go down to 1. I should have made the read that the only way attacking with everything makes sense is if they have a Mutagenic Growth as their last card. Because if you don't have a Mutagenic Growth, then like you just attack with the Channeler. There's no reason to attack with the 2 Soulscar Mages and give a free block there. So as soon as they attacked before blocks, I should have dismembered the Dragon's Rage Channeler so that if they wanted the Mutagenic Growth trigger or like the Surveil trigger, they would have had to Mutagenic Growth before blocks. And I could have seen, okay, this Soulscar Mage is going to be too big. I'm going to throw the Insect under it to chump block. This one's going to be big enough for me to eat with the Grim Flayer. And I could have done that. That would have been the smart line. But instead, I went to blocks, let them eat both my token and the Grim Flayer, and put it on myself to hit a live spell. But if I'd eaten the Soulscar Mage, then I could have like attacked next turn, tried to Grist to make an Insect, maybe find something relevant. I would have been dead to that Swift Spear anyway because I'm absolutely attacking with the Grim Flayer. Like, I have to set up the next couple of draws. But, yeah. Oh, well. You live and you learn. Like, usually I don't beat myself up too bad if I miss a line that just, like, wasn't obvious or didn't make a lot of sense. But I think in that situation, the only way that attack makes sense is with mutagenic growth. And I think I'm dismembering that, or I have to dismember the, what's it called? The Dragon's Rage Channeler like 100% of the time. So there's really not a reason to not play around mutagenic growth, like really wrecking me. All right, so we're just trying our best to trade off 1-for-1 with creatures. Post board, your entire game plan is just like keep the creatures kind of as calm and contained as you can. Counter spells really need to be saved for Underworld Breach if you can. Could have countered the fluster or countered the lightning bolt, but I really wanted to save like Fluster Storm for expressive iteration. Unfortunately, they did not have an expressive iteration, so instead we get to endurance. That's pretty nice. They do have double lava dart, but anything they flip over still gets exiled with endurance, or not exiled, but put back into their library. We've got Path of Peril to potentially kill the Channeler, but Endurance does just have reach, so they'd have to throw a bunch of burn spells with the Endurance to kill it, in which case Flusterstorm and Stub get better. And if they don't, I'm just going to start attacking with Tarmogoyf and like holding back Endurance on the defensive. But Endurance does a fantastic, like, triple duty job in this matchup. It shuts down Underworld Breach. It stands in the way of like Dragon's Rage Channeler, Sprite Dragon really, really well, as well as any of their other threats. And trades up or trades down on mana, but trades with threats a lot of the time. And then shuts off like Delirium, so Unholy Heat gets a lot worse. Channeler gets a lot worse. All right, so I had a no land 7. I mulled to 6. I found a I completely forgot. That last match ended because my opponent was down to like 4 minutes on clock going into game 3, and they just scooped the match there. I don't know if it was an internet connection thing, but they were going really, really, really slow. So this is actually going into match 5 here. No land 7. Keep a 6. It's got double Wraith, Bauble. I need 1 land for this to really pick up, but I really don't want to go down to 5 when I've got everything else kind of functional. So, of course, we triple Street Wraith, don't see the land. Bauble does not find us the land. Opponent plays a Ragavan. We still do not find the land, so we scoop it up. Good game. So I'm assuming we're up against Scam. So I brought in like Endurances, boarded out some Wraiths, some Inquisitions. Thoughtseize hits like the big pitch elementals. Bring in Turok. Opening 7 was 1 land. This one at least has like Thoughtseize and Nagoyf. So as we saw with the Thoughtseize there, we are not up against Scam. We are up against just like Jund mid-range, which is unfortunate because I did not sideboard appropriately for Jund mid-range. I didn't bring in engineered explosives. Things like endurance are okay, but they're a lot worse against this than they are against Scam. I could have like fetched and tried to stub the Lily, but they could just pay the 1. I kind of get some threats off the board. I figure I can drown in the lock to fight over this Spyro, or if they dash Ragavan, I can fight over that. They ditch Rag to Liliana, which is really surprising because like Ragavan's such a phenomenal card. But here we at least get to kill a Tarmogoyf, double knock down some Planeswalkers. Last card's another Spyro. Into a dashed Ragavan. Okay. Could have thought Caesar stub, decided not to. Endurance, and I got really punished because I thought about fetching a breeding pool earlier instead of this watery grave and didn't. So, punt on my part. Into a grist. Oof. Grist and an unholy heat, but we get to stub the heat, so I do get to like kill the grist if I want to. Which I kind of have to, because if I don't kill the grist, they're just going to have like an endless stream of chump blockers. Inquisition means that Dash Ragavan cannot let them get back Spyro tokens, which is nice, except Ragavan, of course, hits Traverse the Ulvenwald, which lets them with Delirium just traverse up a Spyro, and that's game over. Compounded by the fact that we kind of hit some lands here when we needed to hit live spells. We'll attack just so we can play the Shadow post-combat. Like, we're not dead. We do have some sizable threats if we just, like, keep drawing live spells. Nope. Okay. Never mind. I do think that Ren should have just pinged me instead of ticking up on a land. Like, I don't think the Ren ult matters. Just in the game, ping me twice, then you have lethal attack. But obviously waiting a turn and spiraling works too. And then Fatal pushes it. So lose our trophy match to Jund. I've seen Jund a lot in the leagues too. Lose a trophy match to Jund, mainly just a greedy 6-card keep game 1, trusting the Street Wraiths didn't get there. Game 2, sideboarding a little incorrectly. If I'd known it was Jund Midrange or Jund Saga, like Path of Peril gets a lot better, Spreading Seas gets a lot better, Turok's great, EE is great, Endurance is okay, but like I didn't bring in Spreading Seas, EE, Path of Peril because I thought it was scam. And as far as boarding out stuff, I'm usually boarding out like Inquisitions either way, Wraith a little more aggressively against like Jund midrange. But yeah, unfortunate, but that's the way it rolls. Still a 4-1 with Sultai, so that's really, really cool. I've got some test cards that I want to try out, including the new, what is it, Elven something, the 1 green sorcery that you scry, scry 3. You can reveal a creature if you do draw a card. I want to try out that card. But otherwise, this is just kind of like my take on Sultai Shadow. I thought about doing a series where I'm just going to like force Sultai Shadow until I trophy with it the way I want to trophy with it. So if that's something you'd be interested in checking out, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Otherwise, we have a link to the YouTube or link to the Twitch channel below if you want to come chat and catch a live stream. Link to this deck list. Link to the Discord down below. And as always, if you're enjoying the commentary, the content, please, please, please drop a follow on the YouTube channel. Trying to hit that 1,000 sub goal. Otherwise, hope y'all have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.